As a local journalist who has documented these exact streets for years, I've literally watched El Salvador go from a terrifying abyss of gang rule to this stabilized yet deeply controversial new order. We're going to dive deep into this explainer today and trace the incredible transformation of a country that happened right before my very eyes.
We are unpacking exactly how Nayib Bukele broke a 30-year cycle of violence. We're talking about transforming what was the most dangerous country in the world into one of the safest. But as you'll see, he drastically altered the rule of law in the process. This isn't just your standard political success story. It's the story of completely redrawing that very fine line between security and freedom.
To really grasp the suffocating terror that used to dominate the streets, we have to look back at the roots of the crisis. It all started with a devastating civil war that claimed 75,000 lives and basically exhausted the entire state infrastructure. Then hit the 1990s, and the United States starts deporting gang-affiliated individuals from Los Angeles back to this fragile post-war El Salvador. The country simply couldn't absorb a massive criminal wave like that. And in that vacuum, well, the streets began to change hands.
And we're not just talking about simple street thugs here. These gangs built a highly structured parallel state. They filled the massive void left by the collapse of the government's own security, justice, and economic systems. Families literally became trapped behind invisible borders right inside their own neighborhoods. Young people were forcibly conscripted, basically, join us or die. Extortion and extreme violence essentially became the constitution of this new ruling state.
Behind the nightmare of our daily lives were two contrasting but equally ruthless forces. On one hand, you had MS-13. They operated through these decentralized, independent cells known as cliques, using demonic face tattoos and a brutal 13-second beating ritual to initiate members. On the other side, Barrio 18. They maintained a much stricter hierarchy, identifying with numerical and Aztec symbols, especially the number 18, and ran a massive systematic extortion network. For decades, these two organizations were the absolute, undisputed rulers of our streets.
So the true breaking point, where everything actually began to shift, was 2019. The public was completely exhausted by a corrupt, two-party system that had clung to power for 30 years without offering any real solutions. Enter Nayib Bukele. In 2019, this wealthy, tech-savvy political outsider won the presidency on one singular, powerful promise: to entirely crush that failing, rotten system.
But before taking the fight to the streets, Bukele rearranged the pieces on the political board. He systematically started centralizing state power into his own hands. Shortly after winning a parliamentary majority in 2021, he actually replaced the Attorney General and Supreme Court judges with figures who aligned with his vision. The goal was crystal clear. He wanted to make absolutely sure that the massive security operations he was planning couldn't be legally blocked by any court. It was about making his future moves legally unstoppable.
Then came the ultimate tipping point, the moment that shattered society's threshold for fear and basically handed the state absolute authority happened in March 2022. Over a single weekend, gangs ruthlessly murdered 87 people. 87. It was the bloodiest period since the Civil War. And this massacre gave Bukele the exact justification he needed to unleash the full, destructive force of his newly centralized state. By provoking the government so overtly, the gangs made the biggest miscalculation of their entire existence.
Right after that provocation, the historic state of exception was declared. Now, this is a highly debated legal mechanism that essentially suspended constitutional rights, the right to legal defense, and civilian privacy. The police, the military, and intelligence agencies were all merged under a single objective. Suddenly, all the legal hurdles for an unprecedented nationwide dragnet were completely gone.
So how did this massive operation actually go down? It was an absolute surgical intervention. The military completely blockaded entire neighborhoods, literally preventing anyone from leaving. Authorities ran deep data analysis on social media and phone networks to trace every single gang connection. And perhaps most crucially, they totally severed the communication lines that had allowed gang leaders to rule the streets from behind bars for years. They stabbed the clique system right in the heart.
This massive wave of operations was crowned with a historic capacity, the CECOT mega prison, built to hold 40,000 inmates. Think about that number. As one of the largest maximum security prisons in the entire world, this facility wasn't just designed to temporarily hold prisoners, it was specifically engineered to permanently isolate gang leaders and sever that complex communication network forever.
As a journalist working on the ground, I can honestly tell you the emotional shift on the streets is staggering. Families who used to literally lock their doors before sunset are now out playing in parks with their kids at night. Small business owners, they no longer have to pay that deadly gang tax. That paralyzing cloud of fear that dictated our every single move and darkened the future of our youth just evaporated. For the people actually living in these neighborhoods, it felt like an overnight miracle.
However, we absolutely must look at the other side of the coin completely objectively. Human rights defenders and international critics warn that this peace has come at an immensely heavy price. Over 90,000 people have been arrested, the right to a fair trial has been severely eroded, access to legal representation has been blocked for many suspects, and tragically, thousands of innocent civilians have been swept up in this massive dragnet and thrown into overcrowded prisons.
And right at the heart of the debate lies this relentless trade-off. On one side, you have the undeniable return of public safety, plummeting homicide rates, and the state's undisputed dominance over the streets. But on the flip side, you have heavy institutional costs, the dismantling of democratic checks and balances, and massive compromises on the rule of law. It is genuinely one of the greatest dilemmas of modern politics.
What happened here completely inverted the ecosystem of fear. The DNA of the new El Salvador has been rewritten. Citizens no longer fear the gangs. Instead, the gangs fear an absolute centralized state. And for the Bukele administration, providing security isn't just a public service anymore. It has become the very definition of their political legitimacy and absolute power.
Now, in the background of this security revolution, there was another radical move that completely shocked the world. Just before the major anti-gang operations even began, Bukele launched an unprecedented economic experiment. He made El Salvador the very first country on earth to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. It was an economic disruption almost as monumental as the security policies.
Which brings us to a fascinating question regarding the traditional financial system and long-term economic stability. How exactly does an extremely volatile digital currency, one that impacts everything from the local grocery store to international credit lines, affect the everyday Salvadoran who is just trying to survive amidst all these sweeping new policies?
Well, the strategy definitely succeeded in rebranding the country to global investors as this tech-forward haven, but the inherently volatile nature of cryptocurrency introduces immense long-term risks to the national economy. It's created deep tensions with traditional international financial institutions, especially the IMF. And on the streets, the reflection is pretty mixed. While some merchants embrace it, a lot of small businesses and everyday citizens struggle significantly to integrate this complex tech into their daily lives. Ultimately, no matter how you look at the picture, there's one undeniable truth here. Whether you view this as a miraculous security revolution or a dark step toward authoritarianism, Nayib Bukele accomplished in just 2 years what all previous administrations failed to do over 3 decades. And they failed despite billions of dollars and endless international aid. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, haunting question. Think about it. What price would you pay to walk your own streets safely at night? Is El Salvador's radical transformation a masterpiece that can be replicated for global peace, or is it a terrifying warning about the true cost of safety? The decision is yours.